right? So you remember this particular poem was mentioned by me when I was taking you through the prosody section. After prosody, we have also looked at the figures of speech, and after figures of speech, we have also looked at forms of poems. And under that category, forms of poems, I did mention this poem under the heading elegy. And as you understand, this poem definitely falls under the category of elegy, but it has a lot of difference from the conventional or maybe the classical elegy. As you understand, elegy is a poem composed on the theme of death. And normally, one of the major difference between a conventional elegy and a poem like this can be even considered as a modern elegy. Of course, modern makes so much difference from the rest of the words. So it's a modern elegy because this particular poem is not a poem that is sprung from the intimate association the writer has with the person who departed. Normally, you understand that Milton wrote Lycidas because of his very intimate friend Edward King, who passed away. Tennyson wrote in Memoriam because of his friend Arthur Henry Hallam, with whom he had a very close, intimate relationship. Keats passed away, and Shelley wrote the poem Adonais. They too had a, of course, if not like Milton or Tennyson, they too had some kind of relationship with each other. Of course, give and take, I would say. Whereas Auden is a kind of a writer who always opposed the kind of poems composed by Yeats, Eliot, and other kind of, because these writers were actually predecessors. They came just before Auden group, right? So here you understand Auden is actually paying a tribute to one of the greatest writers of the times, despite his differences, despite his lack of appreciation, despite his reverence, right? So it is just like it's a situation which demands, or maybe it's a kind of a response which is demanded by the time, right? Yeats, definitely you would say that he was the greatest writer of all times. If you ask me, or if you ask any literature student or a teacher who's the greatest writer of 20th century, especially in poetry, yeah, Yeats will be definitely the number one choice for everybody. Of course, Eliot was there. Eliot was very influential writer, but I would say, as far as poetry is concerned, the greatest of 20th century would definitely actually with that, yeah, we have voices coming up. Prem, is it from your side? Yeah. So we have unlike COVID is also has a death threat. Of course, depression never had a death threat, except that a few of them committed suicide. So this scenario of depression, uh, which made the life very, very difficult. You know, people lost jobs on a massive scale. People had to sell everything they have acquired on maybe half the rate, and then they had to live a life of struggle. So anybody, any writer writing during such a time can never be romantic, as you know. He cannot place love above everything. No. So he had to address the social reality. So Auden and his group, they always had this particular idea in mind. They could never perhaps write about praising nature. They can never write about somebody falling in love with somebody or unrequited love. So these writers were definitely socially committed. Of course, Auden even had an early Marxian phase, right? So the poem, as it comes alive to you, is Auden's political response, his great respect for the Yeats, the writer, not the kind of poetry he wrote. Of course, Auden never had great respect for the kind of poetry wrote by Yeats or Eliot. And but of course, he had great respect for Yeats, the writer, who the world has actually acknowledged and maybe hailed as the greatest writer. So Auden, uh, I would say, is that Auden is making a very, very sincere attempt to appreciate somebody whom he never respected, of course, who respected in the sense as a writer or as what he has actually written. So it is very difficult situation when you wanted to praise somebody you don't really like so much, right? This situation can happen to everybody, right? Even if you are asked to say some good words about somebody who don't actually love, or you don't actually, of course, ക്ലാസ്സിൽ തന്നെ ചിലപ്പോൾ നമ്മളെ സ്ഥിരമായിട്ട് പാര വെക്കുന്ന ഒരാളോട് അയാളെ പറ്റി നന്നായിട്ട് പറയാൻ പറഞ്ഞാൽ വി വിൽ ഹാവ് എ കൺഫ്യൂഷൻ. എന്നാൽ പക്ഷേ ഏറ്റവും അടുത്ത സുഹൃത്തിനെ പറ്റിയിട്ട് പറയാൻ പറഞ്ഞാൽ നിങ്ങൾ വോള്യൂംസ് പറയും. യു വുഡ് ഈവൻ കം അപ്പ് വിത്ത് എ ഹാഫ് ആൻ അവർ സ്പീച്ച്. But this situation is always very visible throughout the poem, right? And my assumption on this particular poem is that, see, Auden is making a very sincere evaluation of the poetry as a whole and the impact of poetry on general public. So this is not at all an evaluation only on Yeats's poetry, but this is also an evaluation of poetry as such in the general life. And he even would be audacious or maybe go to the extent of saying that poetry makes nothing happen. The statement is very shocking and striking because yeah, we all believe that literature and art actually initiate a kind of a social change. Of course, we have a proof for that as well. But Auden, being a writer, he says that poetry influences very little on a man's day-to-day life. A few will remember this day as some a day when somebody has done something unusual, and such expressions are very factual, right? And this is a poem which can be described. Of course, if elegies were exaggerated, if other elegies were really exaggerations, this elegy is a very sincere attempt or to evaluate aids the writer on a very, very factual terms. Nothing exaggerated. There is not even a single line here exaggerated. You will definitely understand when I read the poem. Yeah, the screen is yet to come, but of course, don't worry. We will share the entire PPT on our website so that you can definitely have a
Screen
look
is
at it.
ready. Screen is ready.
Ready.
It.
Yeah, maybe my phone is very reluctant to show the screen, so I'll just skip the screen and move to the poem, right? So introductory part you can perhaps have it on the uh, slides, which which you can see. You can just go through the slides 1, 2, 3, and meanwhile I'll be getting ready with the poem. Yeah. So my style of teaching would include reading the poem and explaining, and you need to have the text with you to understand. I'll be only paying attention to very important lines, and if there is anything needed, we'll go for a discussion maybe tomorrow. By the time I think my this will be ready. Yeah. So just look at the first line. The title is In Memory of W.B. Yeats. So definitely it indicates that it's a poem on memory. And also there is no hint anywhere in the poem, at least in the title, that it is an elegy. So you need not follow the conventions of elegy in this particular. This is just a memoir, a memory poem, right? Where the writer becomes the central figure, as well as you also deviate into the time that produced the writer, and the time that Auden and others live at present. So the first part of the poem, that the poem has three parts, as all of you know. The first part of the poem focuses on the death. Of course, I think in this particular area, Auden somehow comes in line with the convention of an elegy, where an elegy begins with a statement of death, right? Of course, but in a very, very different terms. I'll tell you exactly what are the differences. One, he disappeared. Look at the word that is used, disappear. Disappear is a very euphemic expression. Euphemic, euphemism. I think you're familiar with that. Euphemism is expressing something very tragic in a very mild way. അപ്പോൾ നമ്മൾ മരിച്ചു എന്ന വാക്ക് കുറച്ച് കനളതാണ്. അപ്പൊ അത് ഒരുപാട് സെന്റിമെന്റ്സ് ഒക്കെ ആൾക്കാരുടെ അടുത്ത് കൊണ്ടുപോകും. അദ്ദേഹം കാലം ചെയ്തു, കടന്നുപോയി എന്നൊക്കെ പറയുമ്പോൾ അത് യൂഫെമിസ്റ്റ് ആണ്. അതേസമയം തട്ടിപ്പോയി, കാറ്റ് പോയി എന്നൊക്കെ പറയുന്നത് ഭയങ്കര സർക്കാസ്റ്റിക് ആണ്. അപ്പോൾ അതിന് രണ്ടിനെയും നടുക്ക് നിൽക്കുന്നതാണ് യൂഫെമിസം. യു എക്സ്പ്രസ് സംതിങ് വെരി ട്രാജിക് ഇൻ എ വെരി മൈൽഡ് വേ. So he disappeared. Disappear even would suggest that this particular person has actually was amongst us and suddenly he becomes invisible, right? So the death, the physical death is actually referred to. So the what is actually death? Death is that the person is removed physically from our amongst us or from our midst. Actually, when a person disappears, what happens is that he leaves no trace of the body. So the word disappear would suggest his bodily disappearance, right? But the spirit is here, the poems are here, the poet is here, right? But the